Domestically, the Obama administration has, in a way, one might argue, stretched executive discretion into a new kind of prerogative at home. The kinds of waivers that the administration has been in the business of giving to industries, to labor unions, to healthcare providers of various kinds, for example, under the Obamacare, in the negotiations over Obamacare, the use of executive orders to suspend laws in effect or the enforcement of laws in effect. What do you make of that? Do domestic crises allow an expansion of presidential power, and are these domestic crises that legitimately allow such an expansion?
Well, this is sort of what brings us back to the beginning of our time here together, is that you had all these people claiming the Bush administration had wildly expanded executive prerogative. But what's really happened, the real fundamental change in this area for the last 4 years has been Obama's application of things that were for wartime or for emergencies to domestic policy, where there's no emergency or crisis looming. There's no need for executive action. And this is really expressed, I think, most clearly in this, what I call the immigration proclamation. Right? President Obama just recently announced that he would not enforce the immigration laws to deport 800,000 to 1 million illegal aliens in the country. Now, these were people I have a lot of sympathy for. As a policy matter, I wish Congress had passed a statute saying that people who came here as kids and
you were a legal immigrant originally, is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. These days, I wish I had been an illegal immigrant. I mean, I had a better deal than if I'd been a legal immigrant. But no, the idea is that, right, if you came as a kid and you're a legal immigrant and now you're in school or you're in the armed forces, we're not going to try to deport you. I have a lot of sympathy for that. I think that's a good policy. But our laws, as written by Congress, don't give out an exception to deportation to people who fall in that category. The President Obama just claimed, I'm just, as a matter of my choice of enforcing the laws, not going to do it. There's no emergency. There's no immediate need for action that requires the executive to make that kind of policy choice. And that's why the prerogative, in my mind, and I was trying to be very careful about this, about defending the prerogative, doesn't really need to apply in domestic affairs, because in domestic affairs, there isn't a huge cost to inaction. Right? If you don't act in foreign affairs and national security, the country might get attacked.
Right.
If you don't act in domestic affairs, you have the states, which exist to carry out policies. They're the great background of regulation and state law created by the states. And there are the agencies, there are Congress, but the cost of inaction is not as high, so you don't need a single person to respond for the government.
But for a long time, modern liberalism has tried to use the metaphor of war to apply to domestic policy. I mean, FDR, coming in to fight the Depression, asks for a grant, Congress to give him the executive power needed to wage war on the Depression, as though it were a foreign.
Yeah, he said the Depression is the
foreign
enemy.
war. Yes, that's right. And LBJ's war
enemy.
on poverty, the metaphor suggests the same kind of thing. If you collapse the distinction between war and domestic policy, and you add the president's discretion in war or prerogative in war to peacetime, you face not only constitutional difficulties, but maybe even a constitutional crisis.
I agree. I think that's why it's so important to keep that distinction in existence between the prerogative existing with foreign affairs, but not domestic affairs. The president's role in domestic affairs, if you look at the Federalist Papers, is really just to check Congress. I think that Congress was going to be the big threat. They didn't see the president as being this domestic policymaker. So I quite agree. The thing that happened, I think Woodrow Wilson really is the intellectual father of this, but it really comes to fruition during the New Deal, was this idea that all the powers of the executive that are for war and crisis were to be applied against a non-enemy, against a social condition, bad economy or crime. And sometimes academics, I think, accepted that because they thought the results were good. Right? They thought the New Deal worked, or they thought that the war on poverty, the war on drugs were a good idea. But actually, I would say if you look at the results of those social programs, they've probably done more harm than good. The New Deal did not end the Great Depression.
No.
The war on poverty did not end poverty. The war on drugs is turning out to be very costly for our country. And so I agree that really shows that this. Now, the other thing on the conservative side is that means we don't have to buy into the idea of a big president all the time.
Right.
Just the way some on the other side, on the left, think they need to believe in a small president all the time. The vision that's true to the original Constitution, the original understanding is that presidency expands for foreign threats and emergencies, but domestically is supposed to be the smaller
Liberals don't really
office.
believe in a small president, do they?
Sometimes, if they were consistent, they would. Some of them do. I mean, some of their attacks on the presidency abroad should lead them to think of the presidency
if they're
at home.
consistent,
Yeah, if they were
hypothetically,
consistent.
yes. Okay. Well, I'm not sure I agree with your interpretation of the Federalists, but that's really a discussion for another day.
That'll be for the next time I get to come on the
Yes,
show, I hope.
thank you. Thank you for helping to open the American mind. We'll see you again soon, I hope.
Thank you.